We're going to get started in about 2 minutes, so if you want to grab some gas. I encourage you to sit close if you're able and willing. You can hopefully hear me via the microphone here, but everything's going to be projected on the screen behind me. Might just be easier to hear questions if you're a little bit closer. Welcome. I'm going to invite Andrew to kind of gather us and offer a prayer.
Would you be able to close the door, please? Thank you. Good evening and welcome to St. Gabriel's. Thank you for joining us for the meeting today. So I'd like to just offer a prayer from good old prayer. So would you please join with me in an attitude of prayer? Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel, especially as we gather as a convocation for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, let me introduce myself. If you've not met me yet, I'm Bishop Kenvin. Just starting my 7th year as the Bishop of the Diocese of Bethlehem, soon to be the Diocese of the Susquehanna. And our focus this evening, which is pretty consistent with the fall convocation meetings where I kind of travel around the various convocations of the diocese, is to really focus in on what's going to be happening at convention. So I'd like to just kind of I'm going to walk through the churches of Convocation 6, which we're a part of, and kind of see where everybody's from. So anybody here from Christ Church in Reading? Christ Church Reading, thank you. Good. And are you a delegate to convention? Wonderful. All right. St. Albans and Sinking Spring. I know we got at least one. Thank you. Are you a delegate? You are a delegate. Great. St. Gabriel's in Douglasville. I know we got a crowd from there. Thank you. All right. And who are the delegates from? One. Great. Super. St. Luke's, Lebanon. Where's John? Oh, okay. All right. Well, hopefully he's coming back. It's not. Is it something you said, or do we know? All right. I don't think it's anything I said, but all right. St. Thomas Morgantown. I think I saw St. Thomas Morgantown. Yes, very good. All right. Well, welcome. And again, so grateful that you're here tonight. I will kind of do my best to kind of keep us on a pace to be done in about an hour, but I'll give you plenty of time to ask questions, or you can feel free to ask questions. Hey, Steve, feel free to ask questions and get me to pause throughout. Just raise your hand or stand up or shout out. I want to start by just giving you a few of the convention basics. How many of you have gone to the DioBeth convention page? Just raise your hand. How many have been there? Okay, that's a great start. So if you've not been there, it's easy. You just type into your browser diobeth.org. And the first thing you're going to see when you do that, when you go to the web page, is just an introduction to where convention is and the timing. 154th convention. It'll be held October 17th and 18th in Scranton. So if you're not registered for convention as of yet and you are a delegate, please give Paula Lipinski a call tomorrow to make sure that you're registered. And you should have received a receipt saying that you're registered convention. And then the next thing you're going to see when you look on that website are the special rules of order. Everything is kind of embedded with links that'll take you to the particular documents, and we're going to walk through them tonight, that are really important for you to really read up and to have a feel for before you come to convention. So if you haven't done this already, you got a little bit of homework. We're at the Hilton Scranton and Conference Center. And then the website kind of takes you through the various documents, the transitional canons, the Constitution and canons. Again, those are available. You can click on them and spend time with them. If you're having difficulty sleeping these days, I would suggest the canons of the Episcopal Diocese of the Susquehanna. Read that just before you go to bed. That should do it. And then there's a way that you can pre-file amendments, and I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit to talk about that in a few moments. And then there are the various resolutions that will be coming before convention. A resolution to adopt the transitional canons, the Constitution, the canons of the Diocese of the Susquehanna. A resolution to adopt the agreement and plan of merger. We'll talk a little bit more about that. A resolution to adopt the budget. We got some people who worked on the budget who are in the room. Thank you. What's that? Oh, thank you for being here. A resolution to adopt the church employee compensation for the Legacy Diocese of Bethlehem. So we have to do that separately because of our compensation and the manner in which we put forth our compensation was so different between the two dioceses. But we'll get into that a little bit as well. And then there are resolutions that were passed from the 81st General Convention that we also need to be certain that we review and bring forth to convention as well. The next thing on there are nominations. You'll see the various individuals who put their name forward. And then there's a listing of all the convocation meetings. And let's see, I've been to 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th of 8 meetings. And I will tell you that they've been well attended, and people have just been so grateful for the work that's been done by our working group. So that's my next question. If you have served on a working group, there's well over 100 of you. Raise your hand. Who's been serving on the yeah, we've got a number of people in the room here who've been on working groups. Thank you. Thank you so much for your work that's brought us to this moment. So the dates, the location, more, let's keep going on convention. It's going to be held in Scranton. And there you'll see that if you need to get to the webpage, see those 3 lines up there in the right-hand corner. When you get to DioBeth, that's where you'll click, and then it'll drop down the menu there, and you'll see right there at the bottom is Diocesan Convention. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, by all means, talk to me before we leave. You will want to bring your devices with you if you have one, because that's what we'll be using for voting again this year. For those who've been to convention in the past, you know that we use the V-poll for our voting. There also will be other devices available in the room for those who may not have brought them, so that we can ensure that everyone has an opportunity to vote. So digital voting, talked a little bit about the nominations. So has anybody a chance to take a look at the transitional canons? I know John has. Anybody else looked at the transitional canons? Okay. So the transitional canons are the ones that get us from our convention until the end of the year, before we become the Diocese of the Susquehanna. And they help us to bring together our leadership bodies from our standing committee, our council, commission on ministry, our disciplinary board. It's kind of the document that tells us or gives us guidelines of how we get to our constitution and canons that go into effect on January 1st. And part of the nominations that you see there, if you go to the nominations portion of the diocesan website, is you'll see that there are 3 people, 3 clergy, 3 lay, who've put their names forward for council. That's one of the bodies in which we're putting forward new members. I think we have at least 1 member who's putting their name forward for council in the room. Steve, right? And lay members, do we know? I don't think we have any lay members here. So the slate right now, it's 3 clergy, 3 lay. So there won't most likely be an election for that slate. But there will be an election for the General Convention deputies. And I know we have at least 1 deputy who's put their name forward. Jay, yeah. John, that's right, we got 2. Who else? Miss anybody else for deputies? Yeah, I believe that there are 5 lay deputies and 5 clergy deputies that have put their name forward for 4 slots. Again, we're bringing forward the 2 dioceses, so there are fewer positions available, but there'll be 2 deputies on the clergy side, 2 will be alternates who will be elected the same on the lay side. And then we'll bring together the 2 dioceses. So that'll be all part of the nominations and the elections at convention. Any questions about that? All right. So let's talk a little bit about the resolutions. Actually, before we do that, I want to tell you a little bit about how the 2 days are going to look in terms of business, and this will kind of set us up for our discussions about the resolutions. So Friday check-in is at 3 o'clock. Evening prayer will be at 4:30. This is all Friday night. Dinner will be at 5 o'clock. We'll be done around 6, and then we'll have a 2-hour block from 6 until 8 p.m. on Friday night. And there'll be various presentations. The first presentation is going to be a panel made up of youth representatives from the 2 dioceses. And there also is a video that's been put forth. So that's going to kind of kick off the night, is our youth. That'll be followed by some of the working group reports. There's a few working groups that it's important that we get a little bit more information out, excuse me, out to those who are gathering. One of them is the legal working group, who's going to talk about, all right, John, help me with the title. Agreement and plan of merger. Is that right? Agreement and plan in terms of merger. So the legal team, we told them they had 10 minutes. The lawyers said we only need 5. If you have 10 minutes, it's more confusing. So they've got 5 minutes. They'll be speaking. We have our granting working group is going to speak, because I think it's really important that folk hear about the granting opportunities that are available for congregations as we become the Diocese of the Susquehanna. Not sure quite yet whether Canon Steve is going to give the budget report on Friday night or Saturday, but you're going to hear that at some point. You're also going to hear from the Justice Ministries Working Group and the Beloved Community Commission that's kind of come out of the efforts of that working group. And then the kind of the final 20 to 30 minutes is going to be Bishop Scanlon and me are going to provide our address. It's going to be probably a moderated conversation between the 2 of us, where we talk about what it means to co-bishop the Diocese of the Susquehanna and what will that look like for us moving forward. So that's Friday night. Saturday is going to begin with the first part of the Eucharist. We're going to have a wraparound Eucharist for the day. So we'll begin with the opening collect and the readings, and then we'll move into the business portion of our meeting. That'll take us up to lunchtime for as much as we can get done in that block of time. Then we'll have the gospel proclaimed and the sermon, which will be given by our consultant, Jen Adams, who's a priest from the Diocese of the Great Lakes, and Grand Haven, Michigan. Jen will be preaching, and the prayers of the people will bring us to lunchtime. We'll finish up our business, and then we'll close the day with the Eucharist. So little different context. And then the last thing I forgot was on Friday night at 8:30, after we have our 2-hour block, for those who are able and wish to, we'll have Compline provided at St. Luke's in Scranton to complete the evening on Friday night. The last thing is that there'll be ministry fairs going on, which means there'll be booths kind of outside in the gathering area, outside of the conference center. Various ministries from across both dioceses will be sharing information with their ministries. So you'll have plenty to learn from. All right, let's talk about some resolutions and reports. So I mentioned a little bit about the transitional canons and the Constitution and canons. The resolution says that the Joint Convention will adopt the proposed transitional canons, Constitution, and canons of the Episcopal Diocese of the Susquehanna. And let me talk a little bit about the process of adoption. So the proposed transitional canons and Constitution and canons have been submitted to Convention via resolution, And amendments may be pre-filed until October 3rd. So hoping that you've had a chance to read through the transitional canons, the Constitution, and the canons of the Diocese of the Susquehanna. If you find that there's an area there that you feel is urgent enough for you to bring forward at this moment as an amendment to convention, it has to be pre-filed. And there's a process for pre-filing it. So has anybody been to the reunification website? Just show of hands. Anybody been there? It's reunification, diocpa.org. You can also find it from the diocesan webpage. But when you get there, when you get to that webpage, you will see a link that'll take you to the canons. And again, there's the three dots or the three lines up at the right-hand corner. You click on that and you'll see the Constitution and canons. And from there, once again, you can read each of those canons, but there's a big green box that says file an amendment to the transitional canons, Constitution or canons here. Again, it reminds you that have to be pre-filed by October 3rd, which I think is next Friday. And then if you click on that, it opens you up to a page with drop-down boxes. So you add your name, the diocese you're from, the city, the town, your email address, phone number, and then you get to which of these documents you wish to file an amendment, the transitional canons, the Constitution or the canons, and then the context. Why do you think that there needs to be a change? And then you select a particular section, and you can write in there what your proposed change is. And these will be brought, all of the amendments. So far, there have been 3 amendments that have been filed. And quite frankly, none of them were surprises to us. It's all information that went before the working group. Some didn't like the outcome of the working group and the decision that was made, so they're going to bring it forward by amendment. So those will be brought forward by convention or at convention, and the chairs of the working group will determine what the order of those will be in terms of how we'll receive them. I know that's a little bit in the weeds, but you understand kind of the gist of that. All right. All pre-filed amendments that are not in conflict with the Constitution and canons, that's kind of really the only thing that the working group chairs are going to be looking for, will be considered, and then at convention, delegates will vote to adopt with any approved amendments included. We talked about the transitional canons. They go into effect immediately, and then they expire. They're no longer in play once we get to January 1st. The Constitution and canons go into effect January 1st, 2026, the date of which we become the Episcopal Diocese of the Susquehanna. So my intention tonight is not to walk through any of these documents. We've had some robust opportunities to do that, whether it was the working group who had forums, and thank you for those of you who attended those forums. And there's been a lot of feedback kind of along the way. If you have questions about any of those documents, by all means, you can reach out to the chairs of the working group. Melinda Artman is from the Diocese of Bethlehem. What's Grant's last name? Grant? It'll come to me. Grant is from a church in New York, from the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, Grant Ambrose. You can reach out to either of those 2 chairs if you have questions, or if you need some assistance to pre-file an amendment. All right. Questions? Let's talk a little bit about the agreement and plan of merger. So this is from the resolution. Be it resolved that this convention approves the proposed agreement and plan of merger such that the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania and the Diocese of Bethlehem legally become the Episcopal Diocese of the Susquehanna. and it directs that said document be submitted to the Attorney General's Office of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and such appropriate orphans court of this Commonwealth as may be necessary and proper to legally accomplish the reunification. So this is the legal aspect of the work that we're doing, not to be confused with the agreement of union, which we approved at last year's convention, which gave us some guidance in terms of our budget, in terms of our bishops discerning who is going to be putting forth their name towards who is going to be the diocesan. It gave us guidance about our constitution, canons, and kind of the early framework. But this is the legal document that has to go to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We've had a fine legal team. John, how many lawyers were on that? Did extraordinary work. Ginny Schoonover, some of you may know from Towanda, is the chair from the Diocese of Bethlehem. Just did extraordinary work to get us to this moment. And I think, as you can understand, convention is going to vote on this resolution, but given the technical nature of what's required in this document, there's no room for amendment at convention. So not only our best legal minds are working on it, they brought in outside legal firms to kind of assist with this, folk who have, brought these types of documents to the Attorney General's office and to the Orphans Court. So I think we're in good shape. But so we'll present again an introduction to this document on Friday, and then we'll vote on it on Saturday. Any questions about that? All right, Claudia, your good work here, the budget. Yes, extraordinary work done by the working group, members of both the Diocese of Bethlehem, Canon Steve, Paula Lipinski, Libby House, who was the co-chair, just really did remarkable work to get us really to this moment, bringing together two budgets, trying to determine the chart of accounts for two dioceses who were doing things very differently, different accounting models or systems. I mean, it was a lot of work, and they really did it, I think, remarkably. Thank you to those of you who attended the budget review meeting that was held a few weeks ago. And Canon Steve was just really wanted to be able to gather not only feedback from people across the diocese, but then wanted to reach back to a number of the entities that had put funding requests in for the budget, some of which we couldn't meet, some we could, but just to talk to them about the ways in which additional funding for their ministries could be sought in the future through some of our granting. But great work here. Let's look at the resolution 2026. Part of the resolution is the assessment rate. I think if you came to the gathering that we held in the spring, you knew that we were leaning towards the model that was used in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, which is a 10% of the first 200,000 of the normal operating income. For most congregations in the Diocese of Bethlehem, this will be a reduction in their assessment. No longer will there be an acceptance. So the rate will be 10% on the first 200,000 and 12% for those congregations who have operating income in excess of 200,000. They've also put a cap on that, high and low, 10% increase or 10% decrease, so that this doesn't place a huge burden on congregations. So that's part of the resolution, is we're agreeing to the assessment for both dioceses, and then be it further resolved that the proposed diocesan budget as it's presented to convention be adopted. This budget has gone through the finance committees of each diocese. The councils have approved it from each diocese. It's obviously been brought forth by the working group, and now it'll come before convention, as is our process. So here's just some of the highlights. You'll hear more about this at convention, but the budget is balanced at $3.835 million. We're using $214,000 of unrestricted reserves to balance the budget in 2026. The use of unrestricted reserves will end in 2028. That's when we'll move to a single bishop. Congregational assessment, we talked about that a moment ago. We'll follow the CPA model. Again, it just kind of walks through the process there. What else? The budget reflects great collaboration between the two dioceses, a 14% increase for mission, ministry, and congregational life, and a 16% decrease in administrative expenses, which is a good start. We have a good deal of work to do. One of the decisions that was made early on was that we would keep both of the staffs, the senior staffs from both dioceses, keep those employees in place at the same salaries that they had previously, with the exception of a 2.4% cost of living increase. And so some of that needs to be lived into as we kind of move into 2026. We discover a little bit more about what we need, what are the areas of overlap in terms of employees in the two dioceses. So part of the resolution, separate resolutions for each diocese, also looks at employee compensation. Yep, please.
I just want to iterate it. Am I clear that the assessment is explained very clearly, but if a parish is having difficulty, they still may approach for a reduced assessment if they're needed?
Yeah, so the assessment relief model that's a part of, and Steve, you're on that committee, I believe, right now, Mission Resource Committee, who offers an opportunity for folk to come forward if they're struggling to kind of meet their assessment. That will now be available to both dioceses. That was not available in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, so that'll be available to both dioceses. But yes, that's still in place. Yeah. So the resolution says that for the calendar year 2026, each geographic area corresponding to the former Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, the former Diocese of Bethlehem, shall continue to use its existing compensation policies with an increase of 2.4, and that the 2025 parish index calculation shall be used in 2026 for purposes regarding clergy compensation. So it's my understanding that when they looked at the compensation models, particularly for clergy, trying to get to a unified model right away was just not going to be possible. There's still more work that needs to be done there. So we're continuing with the compensation models of each legacy diocese. And you'll see here, this is the grid that's been familiar to folk from prior conventions. Does anybody know how the parish index is calculated? It is like the ASA plus the NOI divided by 62 times 14 divided by the number of people who left in 2024 times the number of people who entered. I'm making all that up, but it's that complicated. And we're not quite sure why it was created the way that it was, other than that we know that they wanted to be able to balance the sense of, some congregations have higher ASA, but they may have a lower budget, and other congregations may have the opposite. So trying to bring all of those into consideration in a fair way created an index that became so cumbersome to use that folk didn't quite know what it means. So yeah, like you, when I looked at 1 to 99, I thought it was ASA right off the bat, but it's not. It does represent, that quadrant does represent most of our smaller congregations, but it's a far more sophisticated calculation. So we're going to work on simplifying that, work on kind of what are the models that are used probably across the wider church to get to a model that'll fit for both dioceses and be fair for our clergy as well. You'll also see the rates for supply clergy that affect some people in the room. That's been increased slightly. So we'll be voting on that. Any questions about the compensation pieces, again, we'll be voting separately on our compensation. Steve?
On your first slide, which was sort of the memo, it says, did I read that correctly? The 2026 budget reflects a 16% reduction in administrative costs.
Down the bottom there?
Yes.
Yeah, 16% decrease in administrative expenses.
It's been asked within our parish that what is the vision and what is the thing, what are the arguments for merger?
Yep.
Being more efficient on administrative expenses.
Yep.
What is the runway and what is the hoped savings to achieve on that runway looking out 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, so I think the runway is, it costs about $300,000 for a bishop. So in the model that we have currently, there'll be 2 bishops basically from Convention 2025 through Convention 2027 when Bishop Scanlon retires. And then we'll be to 1 bishop. So that'll be one of the significant threshold moments. You'll see that that's almost the exact amount that's being pulled from reserves right now. So you get to a balanced budget, but a balanced budget that also has far more dollars going towards mission and ministry and the sharing of resources. So the bottom line was we wanted to get more resources at the congregational level, more opportunity for folk to be able to do things at that level with reduced administrative costs. So you will see that then. You'll also, I think, see some of those changes as we kind of look at what we need from a financial standpoint. Do we need two CFOs? And that's basically what we're working with in 2026. We'll be looking at some of that. But we've got to live into this model a little bit and try to figure out. But I think if you keep 300,000 in the back of your mind, you'll see that pretty significantly in 2 years, a little less than 2 years. Other questions? All right. So this section here, we are not going to vote on these resolutions that came from General Convention, but they need to be brought forth to Convention. And again, I encourage you, when you go to the Diobeth website, you'll have to scroll down a little bit but you'll get to, let me find it myself here. So right after the resolutions, nominations, I think, right at the bottom of resolutions. Thank you. Yeah. So right at the bottom of the resolution. So we've already gone through the resolution to adopt the transitional constitution and the canons of the Diocese of Susquehanna. We talked about the agreement, plan of merger. We went through the adoption of the budget. And then you'll see, and then resolutions to adopt the church employees' compensation. And then after that, you'll see additional resolutions from the 81st General Convention. And we've got a couple of people who were at that convention. And these 4 areas have to be brought forward to convention. So I encourage you to read them. Resolution to amend the Constitution, Article 10. Resolution to increase by 1 the possible number of bishop suffragans in a diocese. A resolution to amend the Constitution, Article 8, regarding clergy and local ecumenical partnerships. And the last one, which might be the most intriguing, so you might want to start there, is the resolution to revise marriage rights for inclusion in the Book of Common Prayer. So these are all important initiatives that were brought forth to General Convention, were approved, and need to be brought to convention. And we have to certify that we brought them to convention, and basically folk have read them. We'll kind of scroll through them at convention. They're not long, but we won't debate them and we won't vote on them. Make sense? All right. We're getting to the end here. So convocations in 2026. As I mentioned earlier, your Convocation 6. The canon missioner for the southern region of the Diocese of Bethlehem is Canon Barbara. How many of you have worked at Canon Barbara, whether it's in a search process or She may have come to your congregation, maybe preached at your congregation. Yeah, a handful of you have. So Canon Barbara will remain as the Southern Canon Missioner. The regions, and I'll show you that, are going to shift a little bit for a few of the congregations in this region who are going to kind of slot over towards what was the legacy southern region of the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania. It just makes more sense in terms of where the congregations are located. But really the focus is going to be on the 4 regions of the new diocese. And if you haven't seen that visually, the gray area is not us. So the gray in the right corner there. Have anybody idea what that is? Philadelphia. Yes, big dollar sign there. And then you move over to the left side of the grid here. That's gray, and the southern portion of that is what? Pittsburgh. Yeah. The Diocese of Pittsburgh, and then the northern portion that goes all the way up to the triangle up there, which is Erie, that's the Diocese of Northwest Pennsylvania. So again, those are the 3 other dioceses, and we're the 2 becoming one. You probably can locate yourself. Can you read the counties there? You probably know what county your church is in, and then you can see if you're in Lancaster County, there are 10 congregations there. If you're in Berks, there are 4. And so the right-hand side there, which is kind of the golden color there, that's the southern region. The green up above, it's the northern region where Canon Melinda is, that has the 3 convocations, the legacy 3 convocations. So you'll notice that each of these regions either has a cathedral or a pro-cathedral. So in the southern region, we have the Cathedral of the Nativity. In the northern region, we have the pro-cathedral in Wilkes-Barre. And then as you make your way into what's the legacy diocese of Central Pennsylvania, so what's going to be now the southwest region there in the purple, and that's where the cathedral is in, I wanted to say Williamsport, but Williamsport is north. That's Harrisburg. And the pro-cathedral is in Harrisburg, which you can see in that lighter kind of yellow color up above. So that's by far the largest region geographically. Not, the number of congregations in each region is pretty close, but that's kind of the geographic makeup. And what Bishop Scanlon and I have been spending a lot of time talking about is how to utilize not only the canon missioners in that region, but how to spend maybe a little bit more time, maybe bring the staff into the regions of the diocese for 3 or 4 days at a time. And instead of just coming for visitations, to kind of hop around to try to do a little bit more focused work with lay leaders and also with clergy in those regions. So there's going to be a lot of experimentation as we kind of live in to the Diocese of the Susquehanna. Any questions about that? Yes.
Can you say, maybe nobody, what is now the Diocese of Central PA going to have canon missioners in the same way that Diocesan does?
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah. At convention, one of the things that Bishop Audrey and I will do is kind of lay out for you a little bit of what the org chart's going to look like for the new diocese and the staff. We've kind of taken some thoughtful time and given people some time to discern whether maybe the new role that they're going to walk into is going to be the right fit for them. But we see 4 canon missioners, which really kind of follows the model that's used in Diobeth. They've had a little different term for it, but they had a northern missioner. Veronica Chappell served in that capacity. So it's not completely new to them, but it's going to kind of be a little bit of shifting of roles for people. So we'll be sharing a little bit more about that and kind of what the leadership's going to look like in other areas like finance and administration and justice ministries. And our hope is that we tapped into the gifts of the people who are serving in the various dioceses in a way that they will be able to be creative and kind of use their talents in a new way. And so far, we're doing pretty well. I think we've retained everybody, so that's good news. Any other questions about the regions? You'll see there, I haven't crossed them all out there, but we were at St. Clair on Wednesday, Christ Church in Strasbourg on Thursday. Here we are tonight. We'll be in Moscow on Monday, St. Clement and St. Peter's and Wilkes-Barre on Saturday, and then we'll have an event. If you have any delegates who are unable to attend, they can go to any one of those events, but the cathedral might be closest. Yeah. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah. So the question is, has there been discussion or a sense of where the cathedral will be for the Diocese of the Susquehanna? And the working group that was kind of charged with looking at that also was looking at the offices of the two dioceses. And really, I think what emerged here was this notion of the four regions and living into the four regions. And I think before we determine whether we only want one cathedral or one pro-cathedral, I think we want to see how the four regions can kind of work together. The two cathedrals, I will tell you, are very different entities. If you haven't been to the Cathedral of the Nativity lately, I will tell you, it has changed dramatically just in the last 4 years. We had the Hispanic Heritage Celebration yesterday. There were over 125 people that attended that celebration. It's now probably one of the largest Eucharist celebrations in the diocese every Sunday. So that's the fastest growing congregation, which is a sub-congregation of the diocese at the Church of the Nativity. So there's a shifting of that. The cathedral in Harrisburg has a school. It's a smaller community, but it's an urban community that reaches out to its community in ways that are integral to the living and loving of Harrisburg in that region. They also are almost adjacent to where the old, when I say old and big, diocesan building was in Harrisburg. Part of the working group's decision was that should be sold. So, as you know, we sold the diocesan offices in Bethlehem to New Bethany Ministries, who was expanding and growing, and we moved into the cathedral. And it's been extremely compatible these last 4 or 5 months that we've been there. They're going to be moving out of their offices in Harrisburg. They'll be moving into a local congregation in Harrisburg. And that's taking place as we speak, and they're going to look to sell that building. So there's a lot of transition that's going on here at once. The next bishop, and I'm not talking about the one that comes after Bishop Scanlon, which will be me. I'm talking about the bishop that's going to come in 2030, that you will probably elect in 2029. We'll be making decisions on where the diocesan office should be, based on really where they want to also be focused and living. And then they have the authority to determine whether there are pro-cathedrals or not. That's a decision of the diocesan bishop. So we're going to live into this for a while. It's a long answer to your question, but the answer is that we're not there yet. We're not there on whether we need one cathedral or two, or maybe we'll stay with 4 hubs. We don't know. Other questions? Yes.
I was told that it was a good idea to ask a question about convocation.
About Convocation? Yeah, thank you. The way that the kind of the process was developed after the agreement of union was that there were kind of 3 phases of our work. The first phase was really some of the significant work that needed to be done from January of 2025 to convention. And part of that was the budget working group, that was the legal team, the Constitution and Canons, probably the disciplinary board team. So of the working groups, probably 6 or 7 have done their work, and they will disband when we get to convention. It'll either, their work will morph into some other leadership body, like budget will move to the finance team of the new diocese. And, so some of that is just going to naturally unfold. And that's phase 1. Phase 2 are for those working groups that are going to kind of carry on and still have more to work on. Maybe the clergy working group is an example of that. The Commission on Ministry is still kind of living into their work as well. But that's kind of the phase 2 work, is work that'll continue into 2026. And then we purposely parked Kajukeji and the Stevenson School for Ministry as kind of phase 3 work that will begin in 2026. Part of the kind of discussion of roles moving forward is I'm going to oversee the Stevenson School for Ministry kind of moving forward and the leadership of that body. So we'll be looking at really what the opportunities are for that school. Anybody go through the Stevenson School? Anybody take courses there? Midge did. I think there've been 4 or 5 priests.
An extension program to Christ Church from Stevenson School. So there was a period of time when, of course, you could reach out and have that course be taught or given to a congregation. So Christ Church did that from Christianity. So there were only a few places that happened. But it was, because of the distance driving, it was a way to get to more.
Sure. Well, the Stevenson School right now serves, I think, 8 or 9 dioceses across the Episcopal Church. So it's a regional school, beyond a formation school for our deacons and for our clergy. But the question is, it's being funded by the Diocese of the Susquehanna. I mean, ultimately, Central Pennsylvania almost completely funded that school, and now it'll be shared among the 2 legacy dioceses. But what's the future viability of local formation schools, and do we need to partner with other entities? So that's one of the questions there. On the Kajukeji, it's a question about, what is our future relationship going to look like in an area that continues to struggle. I've been blessed to traveled there twice. Charlie Baribeau will be going back again this February. I hope that either at least I'll be able to go, maybe Bishop Scanlon will be able to go in 2027 and work with Bishop James. But there's a lot to do there. There's also questions about whether we need to have a capital campaign to fund future ministry there and elsewhere in the diocese. So that's one of the questions. But that'll be part of phase 3. We purposely decided to not focus there at this time. Other questions? I got 12 minutes. John.
A comment, just so we're clear, we call this a joint convention.
Oh, thank you.
But the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, the Diocese of Bethlehem, will be meeting and voting separately when it comes to all the different things that Bishop Kevin just talked about for action. We'll vote on the convention or the Constitution and the canons, the transitional canons, the agreements, all those will be done separately. That's part of the reason why it's so important that we minimize the number of amendments that come to the floor. Because if Bethlehem says, I want to change an A to a T, we vote on it, and Central PA hasn't voted on it, so then we have a conflict. So we're trying to manage that as best we can, while at the same time allowing people to express their legitimate concerns about, well, I just don't like the way Canon 6 is written. Whatever, I'm just making that up, but nonetheless, how we blend democracy with efficiency in 2 days.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah. We are not yet the Diocese of the Susquehanna, so we gather as 2 dioceses. We'll vote separately, as John mentioned, but we can still sit at the same table with folk from Central Pennsylvania, because Paula knows who you are by your device. We are going to have two separate microphones, though. We're going to have the DioBeth microphone and the CPA microphone. That is going to make it much easier for the presiders, and I'm presiding over much of this, so that we can be equally sharing from each side, so that we can kind of rotate back and forth in terms of people sharing information. We will, as John said, we'll need to put forth each resolution and second it. We spent about 3 hours with the chancellors on Friday trying to get a script together for that, because so much of that has to happen on both sides. But we're going to hear what the other side is saying, even though we're going to vote separately. So we're going to know what Central Pennsylvania is saying. I would also add that your point about the amendments, and I just don't, this is being live streamed, right? All right, I won't say it then. But what I would have said, is it's 3-0 right now. There are 3 amendments coming from Central Pennsylvania, nothing for DioBeth. If I didn't, I would have said that. It's harder to get through an amendment now than it might be next year. And the reason why it's harder is because it has to get through each diocese separately. So let's say, for example, the issue is bylaws, and somebody wants to propose an amendment about the bylaws that we've been doing in Bethlehem for about 10 years now, and they don't like it. So it could get approved in Bethlehem, 90-15, and over there, well, let's say it was 60-40 in the DioBeth side, and it was 90-15 on the Central Pennsylvania side. We voted against it. They voted in favor of it. You don't commingle those numbers. Once it's voted down in DioBeth, it fails. Or once it's voted down in Central Pennsylvania, it fails. So in essence, if you wait till next year, you might have a better shot, because it'll be just a simple majority. That could all change. But so I was talking to a colleague of mine who is a chancellor in the Diocese of the Great Lakes, who've just been through this process. They approved, I believe, their constitution and canons at last year's convention, and he told me that this year they have 11 amendments to their constitution. Part of that is they learned from the wider church. They had to go through a different process than we did, but they learned from the wider church of some changes that they needed to make. So, we could be living into these documents for the next few years until we get them right. But I think the working group has done good work. I hope we can trust them in many respects, just as we're going to trust our legal minds who put forth the agreement. So I hope there are only 3 or 4 amendments to come before convention. It's my own personal opinion. John?
One other thing, Bishop, I think you said that the transition canons will terminate on January 1 of 2026, and then the new canons will take place. That's partly true. There's some transition canons, for example, the composition of diocesan council. That transition canon will carry through to the next diocesan convention, presumably the Diocese of the Susquehanna. So the composition of council, the
Yes.
composition of standing committee,
Yes.
whatever's described in transition, that's going to be the composition of those 2 bodies until we get to our next convention, presumably October of 2026.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. What else? Please.
How many parishes will this new have?
How many parishes will we have?
And also, if you could speak a little bit of how that would affect your bishop's visitation.
Great. Yeah, good question. Be roughly 110 or so congregations in the new diocese. We both began, Bishop Scanlon and I began with about 60, but in terms of the congregations that have been closed since we've been bishops, we've been closing about 1 a year, and that'll probably continue. So we see that number probably by the time I retire in 4 years, that number will be in the 90s somewhere. And we're also doing some really good work in bringing congregations together as well. So that number may reduce as well. But so the bishops are required to visit every congregation once every 3 years. That's in the canons. So you can take that, whether it's 100, that's 33 visitations per year to visit every congregation once every 3 years. And so there are 52 weeks in the year. You can do the math. You give the bishop a couple of weeks for vacation, a couple of weeks for continuing ed. They're off at House of Bishop meetings and all of that. I think in my figuring, I can probably get to about 42 or 43 in a year. So that'll give some flexibility. That's well over 120 congregations. So if there was an urgent need here and there, we could still get there. It's what's being done in much larger dioceses all over the country. I think when we were walking through this process, we talked about the fact that of all the dioceses that are a single state, remember Colorado and Nebraska, Alaska, Arizona. These are all dioceses that are a geographic area about 4 to 5 times our size. Alaska is 20 times our size? I don't know what the number is. But most of them have more congregations than we do and more geography than we do, and the bishops seem to find a way to do it. The other piece, though, is I think getting creative in the regions of the diocese. We've always looked at visitations as just Sunday morning. I think we may have to look at that a little bit differently. And I think it could be done differently in a way that still can be vital and vibrant for the communities who gather. We'll probably have to look at confirmations. Even in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, they had regional confirmations as well as the bishop's visitation. I've had the luxury of being able to do all of my confirmations pretty much on the Sunday when I come and visit, and I've been able to go to some congregations almost annually to do confirmations. That may have to shift a little bit. It's not going to be an issue for the first 2 years because Bishop Scanlon and I will both be here. So actually, we're going to be able to probably see all of the congregations in a 2-year period, and she'll probably get to all the congregations in Legacy Dio Beth before she retires, and I'll surely be able to do that in Central Pennsylvania as well. We've had 5 swaps. I think 5. No, we've done our 4th. We've got our 5th one coming. I was just in Danville, Pennsylvania. I was in Lock Haven before that. I was in Camp Hill. I've been in Williamsport. So I've been all over various parts of Pennsylvania. I-80 and I know each other well. I know the new rest stops, where you stop now. And Bishop Audrey was just at the Cathedral of the Nativity yesterday. She's been in Hazleton. And where else did she go? She was in Whitehall. Hazleton, Whitehall. I know she's going to Trexlertown soon. So before you know it, you'll be seeing both of us. And John.
Bishop, in response to someone said how frequently, you said every 3 years is required under the canons. Those are the national canons.
Correct.
Something someone can say, I want to amend our canons to put a different cycle on that.
I guess you can try.
Well, you want that amendment?
No, I don't want that amendment. What else? Who would like to close us in prayer? I always like it when a layperson does it. Jay, how about you? Would you do it for us? Thanks. Thanks.
Loving God, thank you for this time together and knowledge that Bishop Kevin has shared with us. Help us to be flexible and open to change as we move into our phase 2 of the reunification and further into 2026. Help us all to find the best ways to use our gifts that you gave us to help others
Amen. Thank you. Thanks. Well, I look forward to seeing those of you who are going to be at convention soon in Scranton. And again, thank you for all the work that you did to get us to this moment. So grateful. See you soon.
Please grab some food on your way out. Thank you, Claudia, the adventure for bringing food. Please take some more.
Yeah.
To you about our canon, or the proposed canon, on amending canons to change that vote requirement from 2/3, which was the last text I saw, to a majority, which is the word they modified it in the Constitution section. They changed it from 2/3 to a majority, and Wiley